Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Elephants. I'm your host, Destiny Farley, and today I'll be interviewing Ben Nevares. Ben holds a degree in sports conditioning with double minors in psychology and coaching, along with a master's in exercise science and coaching education. He conducted research on genetics and nutrition during his academic years and currently works as a personal trainer at a UFC gym here in Las Vegas, Nevada. He also has a podcast titled Ben Thinking, where he addresses all things health, fitness, and entrepreneurship. I asked Ben to come in today to discuss some of the more controversial aspects of health and wellness, including the body positivity movement, the connection between mental and physical health, and how much our economic class affects our ability to live a healthy lifestyle. But before diving into all of that, Ben, could you just briefly introduce yourself and give a little more detail on your background and how you developed your expertise?
For sure. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for the kind introduction. So, my background started in my first interest in health probably when I was like 5 or 6 years old when I started lifting weights. And it was just going to the gym with my dad. And then by the time I got to seventh, eighth grade, really realized that this was going to be a place that I wanted to learn more about, because body's just, it's a cool thing, to the way we move, the way we flex and extend, and all these fun things. And then by the time I was, I guess, my senior year is finally when I decided that this is definitely something I was more interested in, especially in genetics. And so I went ahead and reached out to somebody at Texas A&M where I got my undergrad at, and it was Dr. Lightfoot, who runs the Huffines Institute of Sports Medicine. And so he does a lot of research, former NASA and John Hopkins grad, and then researcher at NASA, and then researcher for NASCAR. And so we got to work with a lot of different, he had a wide variety of clientele that he's worked with before, and he was doing stuff with dopamine research, and it's called basic exercise physiology. So basic exercise physiology is more the study of the nitty gritty, what's happening in the cells, right? And then, so I reached out to him, started studying that, and then the entire time I was competing in powerlifting. So I ended up making it to Team USA my senior year of high school, qualifying, and then going to Hungary for my first international competition in probably August that same year, September that same year. And so it was like, this is definitely the place I wanted to be in. Being in the sport and being at such a high level, I was forced to be specific with how I wanted to write my training and what I wanted in terms of mobility and overall performance, right? So it was everything from sleep to nutrition to how I'm writing my programs to corrective exercise. So I became very, very involved in all those things. While on the team and even in high school, I was training teachers. I was training a lot of different students. In college, I would train a lot of the guys on the powerlifting team, several that have made it to the All-American status. And so after that, I mean, I just continued, right? Just continued to lift and continued to be involved in the space, and then ended up getting my master's with Dr. Meg and Mike Stone. Dr. Stone was the head exercise physiologist for Team USA, the Olympic team. So they're known to be some of the best in the nation for what they do, and they're more applied physiology, which is a little bit more looking at. I can't really. I take like more broad data, and then I can apply that a little bit more effectively to an individual, right? Not that you can't do it with basic, but it's a little bit more lengthy. And so you take basic physiology and you turn it into applied physiology with the information you know, right? So then I got my master's from them, and we did a lot of like force plate data stuff. So like if you stand on force plates, if you've ever been around force plates, then it gives you just an idea of like what your power output is like and all these other things. So that's kind of like my background. Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of sports, lots of nutrition, lots of, information about the body, how it works, metabolizes, things of that nature.
For
It's
sure.
a passion of yours, you would say.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's
Yeah.
been something I've very much so enjoyed it on for a lot of different reasons. I think because you can create some really cool relationships, and also the fact that you have control of your own existence and what you want in the gym. If you put true honest work in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to see the benefits.
Right.
And I figured that this would be something you could apply to anything in life. That's with podcasting, that's with business, that's with health and fitness. But it's, if you put honest time and work into something, then you will see the payout, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked briefly before this. You were kind of explaining to me the difference between health and wellness and how they're similar, how they're different, how people get them mixed up. But I think it would be good for people to kind of have that frame of reference before diving any further into the episode and into the more controversial stuff. So, could you provide some clarity on the distinction between the word health and the word wellness and how it plays a role in a healthy lifestyle?
So we have general health, right? Is going to the doctor to make sure you're not having a cold. And there's specific definitions that I don't have off the top of my head, but health is your baseline. Do you have enough red blood cells? Can you move? Can you walk? Can you breathe? Is your heartbeat in a general range of 60 to 80 beats? Are we having arrhythmias? No. Okay, then we're generally healthy, right? You can survive and maybe have some preventative care in the future. With wellness and fitness, we're looking a little bit more in depth to, okay, now we're looking a little bit more geared towards performance, if you will. So not high elite performance necessarily, but having enough, like, are we in the 60 beat per minute kind of range? We're no longer just reactive to health, but we're proactive and taking initiative for our own health. So there is a definite difference between, I think, all three of those categories, and then fitness, I think, would be the next step after wellness.
Okay.
And then I think wellness also includes mental, health as well, versus health usually just deals with the body. And then wellness is how are you doing as a being, as a human in this existence, right?
Okay. So how big of a role, kind of on that note, would you say that mental health plays in physical health?
Insanely, right? And it's I think, very underrated or undervalued, but it is something that's continuously kind of coming up into the conversation, which is very much so appreciative. But you have such a wide variety of understanding how mental health plays a role, and even how you get started, right? Like, what somebody who may be intimidated by the gym because of what they have going on in their own life and their own stresses, and they don't realize, like, and I think not that they don't realize, but sometimes we don't realize that stuff has an effect on whether I want to go to the gym or not. There's days where I just, man, my family life's hard, my whatever's going on, my job's tough, and then you have to go work out. Like, you're mentally drained and stressed. It plays a massive role on health. Is lengthy, right? It can be simple, but there are a lot of pieces to it, which I think is why having a team behind you is important. But it's like having the knowledge and is also necessary as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's days where, and I think that's where discipline comes in, because if I've seen so many quotes across so many different podcasts, where it's like, if you're relying on motivation, or if you're relying on how you feel during that day or during that moment, like, you're definitely not gonna go if you're having a bad day, right? And that's where discipline and forming good habits comes in, because then it's just something that you do because it's just what you do, even if you don't feel like it, like the same way that we get up and go to work even when we don't feel like it. You do it because you have to, and because it's good for you, or because work's going to pay the bills, or because the gym is going to make you feel better. And there's been plenty of days where I'm like, man, I don't want to go, and I go, and the hardest part is like getting out of the car and like getting my workout started, and then by the time I leave, I actually feel better. Because it's hard to put yourself like in the mindset like, yeah, if I go, I'm going to feel better. Because when you're depressed, or anxious or whatever, you're just caught in that moment, and it feels like you're going to feel like that for the foreseeable future, right? And then you go and you do something and you're working out, and um I've read, I don't know if you know much about this, but I've read articles about how exercising releases endorphins in your brain. And endorphins actually, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because this may be inaccurate, but endorphins actually have the same effect on physical pain as they do like emotional pain. So endorphins are supposed to like be what would be the word? Like they help you cope with pain.
100%. I mean, you're spot on.
Right.
That's accurate.
Yeah. So I've read research about how we actually working out can help with like emotional pain.
It's
too.
amazing what it does. Like it does release dopamine, right? And dopamine is our feel good thing, right? And it helps regulate serotonin, and we get all these nice endorphins and good feelings when you start doing your exercise. And you're right, staying disciplined is extremely important. And I think the flip side is also important. I do also believe if I have a client that comes in that I see, let's say that is in the gym 4 days a week, and on one day they're so fatigued and just like they had a tough day at home. Stress is stress, and the body doesn't really know how to differentiate between those two things. So if I know I'm going to see you 4 times this week, I'm playing the long game with my fitness, right? I'm not trying to get fit in 4 months and then never come back and then I go and lose. You hear the story where people they eat or they get on a diet or they start working out, and then 3 months later they're back on their normal habits and then never get to, or they put on all the weight, right? Or put all the weight back on. So I think that understanding that it is a long game and being disciplined to make sure that it's a part of your life no matter what is important, but also making sure that you're taking care of the fact that if I don't show up one day this week, it's not going to murder me, right? But I need to make sure that I'm not doing that all the time. It's just there is a reason here. I'm listening to my body, listening to my brain, and saying, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. Am I going to perform my best in the gym? Probably not. So what's my intention with going into the gym? If I'm wanting to go and work in and work hard, then maybe if I only have 4 hours of sleep, I think about it logically and say, maybe I don't do that and I still have activity, but my activity is I'm going to sit in the sauna for 15, 20 minutes, get a good sweat in. We know it's good for the heart. We know it's good for the brain. And then maybe I do some stretching because Lord knows nobody stretches enough. So I think it's important to stay disciplined to understanding you're going to live a fit lifestyle, and letting and also being okay with or being logical with your approach with your training, right? If you only have 4 or 5 hours sleep, you didn't eat at all today, making sure your training is adaptable is to your life as well.
I think that this is probably where I struggle because this is kind of playing on that idea of health and wellness that we talked about at the beginning, where I'm super disciplined. I have like a very perfectionist mindset and I'm very hard on myself. So if I have my routine and my routine is I'm in the gym 6 days a week, 5 days a week, and I miss a day or I miss 2 days because I'm not feeling good or because for whatever reason, then I'm really hard on myself and I tell myself this narrative about like you're being lazy, like you're not going to look the same, whatever. It's not usually that dramatic, but it's, thoughts like that pass your mind. And yeah, I think that that's where I don't have good balance, like I have good discipline and I have good physical health, but the mental health and that overall picture with wellness and like this idea that it's like a long-term goal, like could definitely use some work there.
I think we all could because it's so easy to go online and look at people. And I think a lot of people, I see a lot of Instagram posts or reels or TikToks that are always like, you have to show up no matter what. 7 days a week, don't miss a day. But then you have that same person that's like, man, I'm always injured. My shoulder really hurt. It's been hurting for a long time. But I'm still going to bench today. Doesn't matter. Still work through it. And it's like, yeah, sure, you can work through it, but it doesn't need to be work necessarily in in weights, right? Stretching is still work, and it's hard, and it's stressful. It's still tough on the body. So still making progress, but the progress isn't always like hitting the weights or going for the run. Maybe you go for a walk. Maybe your body just really needs a walk. And
Yeah.
we know that activity is better than no activity, So like still staying active, but not being so aggressive with ourselves, not being that perfectionist, which I think provides benefits, but at the same time, it it can take away from the way you interact with your relationships, right? And like holistically, yeah, I want to have good, healthy relationships. I want to have good business. I want to be good at my craft, and I also want to be healthy. And sometimes I need to pivot a little bit between those other things to make sure that I'm being my best self for all these different things that I care about, right? If not, then I'm like 6 days in the gym, and then now I'm not seeing my spouse or my fiance or, my partner, and or I'm in the gym 7 days a week and I'm missing calls for work. Like, is the gym really that important? Where now your lifestyle is, or your career is now on the back burner to that degree? I don't think that it's worth it, right? Just
Yeah. It kind of ties back to this idea that anything in excess is not good for you. So it's about moderation, or balance, yin and yang, whatever.
yeah.
Some Buddhist out there talks about it, but
And I think it depends on your goals, right? Like if my goals are to compete for Team USA, then yeah, there are more days that I'm going to sit there and say, man, I really don't want to go, and then get up and go, right? Because I know that in 6 months I have a competition. I don't have another option. I've signed up for this competition. I want to be my best. What school's on the back burner, but now I'm going to be my best self for that event, and then yeah, I can readjust, right? If my intentions or my goals are to be healthy or to be more fit, then understand what your goals are. I think is
right,
the point I'm trying to make.
right, right. So one of the first things that I wanted to jump in with you today is the body positivity movement, and your opinion on that from a health and wellness perspective. I was wondering if you could give the audience some background information on obesity and the role genetics play in that. Why is it that some people are more prone to obesity than others? And why is it more difficult for those people to shed weight?
It's an unfortunate draw of the hand, right? We're all given different hands in this life, and some people are just equally gifted in the space of performance where they can make it to the elite level, and then there's other people that do struggle with being type 1 type 2 diabetes, right? It's an unfortunate reality, but our bodies are, we have a lineage of genetics that has played into why we are the way we are. There are also activities that even our parents did or didn't do that affect the way our genetics exists, right? If their genes were never turned on, whenever we do items, whenever we work out, we turn on specific genes. And if my parents never did, then over a long period of time, then if we're looking at a Punnett square, right, back in like third grade, fourth grade, whatever, whenever you learn it, it's like we don't need this thing if it's never really on. Like you're training your cells, you're training your DNA that you don't need this specific adaptation anymore, right? So like it's an unfortunate reality, but at the same time, you can take it into your own hands and still be active and reduce your chances, and then make it not better just for yourself, but also for the people following you, right? And I think there's a lot of really cool power to that. And yeah, so yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah. What like, do you know if there? Because I remember reading. Actually, it was in a psychology class, like in high school. Um, and we were reading about how I remember it stuck with me. I don't remember exactly what the chapter was about, but I remember it gave me a different perspective on obesity, because there's this misconception that people that are overweight because all they're doing is just sitting there and over consuming and not trying, and like there's this stigma that's kind of attached to people who are overweight, which that may be true in a lot of cases, but it's also like I feel like people think, oh, if they just did what I did, or if they were doing this, or they don't have a frame of reference for how difficult it is for them to actually lose weight, or the way that like food metabolizes in their body is different. There's people like my family, my mom, she can eat like shit and not gain weight. I mean, to be fair, she's an athlete and she's been an athlete her whole life, but she also, is just naturally skinny. And then there's people who, if they took my mom's diet and they were more prone to obesity or to gaining weight, retaining fat, things like that, oh my God, like it's insane. And I remember, back to what I was saying, in this psychology class, I read a little snippet about how people who are overweight, like we have fat cells in our body, and like average, like people that weren't considered overweight had like 30 million fat cells or something, and someone who is overweight has like 75 million fat cells. So their body was just more inclined to retaining fat. Is that accurate, or did you learn about that in school, or what are some of the like actual genetics that make people retain weight like that?
So there's one study that we worked on towards the end of my time at A&M in with Dr. Lightfoot. That was they were trying to figure out what the fat, no, the couch potato gene was, and how the body responds to dopamine. And so we had two different sets of mice. One set of mice was on a Western style diet, which is high fat, high sugar diet. And then you have the other set of mice that were on a chow diet, or what they're normally given, right? They're a specific breed of mice. We know that they it's like kind of like a dog food, if you will, like a prescription dog food. And so we know that it's a balanced meal for them. And the ones that were on the high fat, high sugar diet ended up having much less activity, and even without a lot of weight gain at the very beginning. Like, it was an immediate response where now we're having a lot of dopamine released whenever we're having our sugar. So whenever I go work out, I just don't get that same hit, right? So then I'm like, don't really want to work out very much. And how that changed their genetics was kind of fun, right? It continues to get passed down where you don't have that same reaction to exercise anymore, and you have to really, that's where discipline really, really comes into play, when you don't have the feel good thing about working out, because some people will not feel good. They don't like working out. It's like, this sucks. I don't like it. I don't ever feel good. I don't get the endorphin release. It's like, well, you do, but it's just so minute that you really got to stick with it. And over time, you will be able to feel the effects or feel the difference. And again, not just for you, but for your following generations. Genetics plays an insanely important role with how our bodies react to foods, but at the same time also how it responds to activity.
That's crazy. I didn't know that there were people that literally don't. I mean, I wouldn't say I like working out. Like, I wouldn't say I enjoy it, right? Like, I don't get excited to go to the gym. I don't know if I can think of a workout in my entire life where I've been like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the after, where it's like the residual effects. But you're saying that there's people that don't even feel the residual effects after.
Yeah. So then they're not motivated.
Yeah.
Right. And so then what motivates them is like, oh, well, the sugar gives a quick, great high, right? Like, it does release dopamine. And so they get their fix. And then so they're like, why would I ever go work out if I never really enjoy this thing? Like, everyone talks about a runner's high. I never felt a runner's high. And I am a little bit different, where no matter what, I like, now is my fitness journey has changed a little bit, and it's been a very fun but odd and hard transition from where I was 10 years ago to now, where I loved it. It didn't matter what day of time. Like, I'm going to go work out. Like, this is what I want to do. I love it. It's the best thing in the world. And then you get into how the world works outside of just being in high school and middle school, and even in college, where it's so much more. There's so many other stressors, so many other things pulling me other places, that it can get difficult to want to go to the gym. Like, man, I'm tired. I mean, I worked all day, and it's 6 o'clock, and I'm drained. To get yourself into the gym, it becomes more and more tough, and then it's almost like it's exponentially terrible. Like, I'm gonna eat more. I'm gonna feel like I'm not gonna get as good of a benefit when I do work out. I'm less and less motivated, and it like spirals.
It's like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So that's crazy, because that's just one of those things that people, if you don't have the knowledge, right? Like if you don't have the experience or the background that you do with genetics or with how our body responds to dopamine or different foods, it's like you look at people walking around and they're like, oh, they're just not doing enough. Like I'm doing it. If
Yeah.
I can get up and do it, if I can do this, which, there's some truth to that. I don't want to, kind of not give people their flowers, like, because hard work is hard work. But I do feel like there's people that are just, like you said, dealt a shitty hand. So it's so much more that they have to overcome. Whereas someone who, might naturally love the gym or love working out, or that's where they go to release or to disconnect from life, there's people on the other end where that's the part of their day that they dread, right? Whether it's because of self-esteem, because people have like gym anxiety, about, like, even I get gym anxiety. I've been going to the gym for 10 years and I still don't like going by myself because I'm just an anxious person. And so if you're someone who's like not comfortable in your skin or you don't know what you're doing, it can feel like, I'm sure, like it's just too much to tackle. Like it's too much of an obstacle. They have to, you know, overcome like this mental barrier of going in and feeling like they're being watched or feeling uncomfortable. And then, like, if they don't know what they're doing and then they're not getting like the benefits, and like you said, if they're going in and their brain isn't releasing those endorphins, they're probably like, what's the point of me being here? Right. Um, and then not to mention us being in America where our the foods, man, like the stuff that we have access to, the stuff that's banned in other countries that the European Union bans, that we allow here and that the FDA approves, like
It's insane.
it's literally insane.
People are banned to sell specific chemicals in other countries because the population has said, no, we don't want these things. And the company will say, like Johnson & Johnson will say, all right, we won't sell it over there, but you know what? The Americans are okay with it, right? So then, or they're not paying enough attention to it. So then, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and just let's sell it over there because we can make more profit. The people aren't always out for your health. A lot of times they're out, they're there to make money, and
They're all out to make money.
It's
Any major
so sad.
corporation. Yeah, dude. So you have all these barriers, right? So with that in mind, right, and with the difference between health and wellness in mind, there's a lot of people out there that argue that the body positivity movement may inadvertently like normalize an unhealthy lifestyle, or hinder people from making more positive changes to their health. In your opinion, and like with your background, where do you draw the line? Because I can see both sides, right? It's like you need to feel comfortable in your body. Mental health is a part of overall health and wellness. So if you're, have a really negative inner critic and things like that, that's not good. But there's also like complacency, right? And there is a point where your weight is unhealthy for you. I think heart disease, I don't know the exact like medical name of the disease, but something with our heart in America is the number one killer of American people every single year. It's like 700,000 or something.
Yeah, it's cardiovascular disease. It's the number one killer.
Right, which is linked to obesity.
Correct.
So where do you draw the line in that movement? At what point does body positivity become unhealthy?
I think that oh man, this is good. So you bring up one other point that I want to touch on before we leave it, and I'm going to forget. So you brought in that it is complex, and in those who can get unmotivated are sorry.
No, go ahead. ADD. It happens. It happens every episode.
Say it again.
I said ADD, where you lose attention.
100%. Every episode. 100%. So we have all these anxieties and things, and it is complex and it is convoluted, but I think just making sure that you are doing the right things for your health. I think that there's probably something else that I wanted to say that you said that I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. But it is complex, and it is taking it little by little. But on the, like, where do we draw the line? I think there is no question that being obese is unhealthy, right? Body positivity, sure, you can be positive about being big, but I think that it becomes you can't lie that it's saying that's healthy, right? You can be happy with being fat, or you can be happy with being to the nth degree of big, but then you can't be frustrated, or I think it's like, I think Lizzo is one of the people that's very body positive, right? I don't know a lot about Lizzo and her journey, but from what I understand, like, a lot of people follow that, and they're like, oh, she's just so happy to be a big girl. And sure, you can be happy to be a big girl, but it's not healthy. You're gonna die early. You can't move very well. Things are not built to for us to be that big. We're humans. We're supposed to be an average size male or female 50 years ago was in like, there's a stat that I don't know off the top of my head that's smaller than we are today, and we continuously get larger. Then 2/3 of America is obese, and it's the saddest thing. If you walk around the mall, people aren't taking the escalators. People are taking the escalators, not the stairs anymore. And you go across the pond, you go to Europe, and everybody's using stairs. Everyone's walking everywhere, and I think that we have a society that is harder to walk places. It's almost seen as taboo. If I walk to the store, then it's almost seen like, oh, this guy he's probably poor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying to get my walking in, or even I just want to go to the store and get my groceries. That's the way that we were like meant to do things, or the way we have done things for a very long time. And what is an extra 200, and probably not 200 steps, but like half a mile in my day? Probably good for me, right? And so I understand that they have a society that's a little bit more helpful for those things, but I don't think that we're doing ourselves any justice by looking down on people who walk around places, right? Looking at somebody who's down the street and walking, and automatically having this like preconceived notion that they're low in socioeconomic status.
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah. There's different cultural like stigmas attached to certain things that make it difficult. I think that, kind of circling back to what we were talking about, that no one should be shamed, right? Because I don't feel like I feel like that's the origin of the body positivity movement, right? Was to kind of fight and counteract the people that shame people for looking a certain way or being a certain way. And also because there is unhealthy societal expectations of what beauty is, right? It just happens because we're humans, and there's things that are accepted. There's actually like psychological studies on what humans find attractive, like around the world, like across culture. So I think that there's a lot of like unhealthy expectations that are placed on both men and women to look a certain way, and it has the right idea, right? Like the body positivity movement, it's got the right idea, because you don't want to make anybody feel like shit. You know what I mean? But it also, I would draw the line in that movement when it starts to encourage complacency or makes people feel like it's okay to be unhealthy, because that's dangerous, and I don't want to say like I'm cynical or jaded. Maybe I am. I don't know. Some people might say I am, but I believe that like our government, or really, like, it gets even bigger than that, but like the top 1%, whatever, they love to see and encourage anything that's going to keep us fighting amongst each other as a people, right? Or this may make me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but whatever. There's a reason that they don't do anything about our diet or about the fast food or about anything, because if we have like a healthy, cohesive group of people, right, a healthy population,
a healthier community, people who are a little bit more like giving grace, but having a standard of expectation, like having standards for our health and not, or standards for what we put inside of our bodies, then we start to stand up, and then people start making less money. People have less power. I don't think that it's like, sure, maybe it sounds like conspiracy, but at the same time, like if we can see that there's companies that are clearly taking stuff out of products in other countries that they allow in ours that have been found to cause cancer, and they're still doing it here, and everyone's blind to it, then I don't know that it's conspiracy. I think that it's very clear now. It's just like not letting, but having people open their eyes and like wake up. Like, it's your health, and they don't care.
Right.
They are gonna make everything, like, alcohol is not healthy. We know that, right? But alcohol sales have gone up 60% in the last 3 years. It's like, there's no stopping it. They're going to make it as convenient as they possibly can for profit. And that profit isn't always, and very rarely, health related. It's hard to be profitable and
And care about people.
and care about people. It's an
Yeah.
unfortunate reality,
Yeah.
right? Especially as things continue to get more expensive. But who's the one doing it? Where did it start? It was like, well, we can mark this up 300%, and they're going to pay for it. And then now everybody's marketing their stuff up 300%, and then you change your marketing a little bit, and now it's up 400% because you needed to pay for your marketing. And so now you've changed the standard that people are willing to accept, and it slowly goes up, and people allow it.
Right. And I don't even mean to be a hypocrite because, like, I'm one of those people that allows it. Like, to me, it's so expansive. Like, I just know there is so much shit that I probably eat that is just artificial and bad for me and disgusting. And I don't know where it came from, that it's like, I don't even tap into it. I don't even try, and because if I did, and I'm sure maybe a lot of people feel this way, if I were to open that can of worms, it would mean like a whole lifestyle change for me, right? Like it's also like more expensive to be healthy, which we'll kind of get into here in a second, but it's like, I don't know. It's kind of scary to think about. So I just don't even touch it. I know it's out there. Like, I know that there's bad shit that I'm eating that I shouldn't be eating, and that like America is known for that around the world. Just like,
Yeah.
there's like a lot of bad things that we're known for in terms of like health and wellness.
And I think a lot of it is like it can be more simple, but the good things feel so good, right? Like eating, I like Takis. Takis, I know
love Takis.
they're not healthy. They're not healthy, right? But I like the flavor. I like the texture. But it's manufactured in order to give me a specific response. The bag is specifically marketed and to attract my eye, so that I see that I'm like, oh, that's a little different. I want to see what that flavor tastes like, right? Like it's all designed to catch your eye. Like they know the way their brain works. They know we're not that like we're complex creatures, but at the same time oddly simple, right? There's things like we know we like things that taste good. And everybody likes different tastes and everyone has different flavors, but overall, we like things that taste good as a general concept. Lettuce is cool, but I'm sorry, Takis taste
that dopamine hit.
Yeah, Takis taste better than lettuce, but lettuce is a hell of a lot healthier than Takis are, right? But it's designed that way. So staying on the outside of your grocery store and cooking at home more and having a community, inviting your friends for dinner. I feel like we've lost a lot of that the Europeans do very well. And I'm not like America's great. I love the opportunities we have. There's a lot of opportunity for growth. A great place to live. But at the same time, I don't think we should discount the things that they're doing over there because they've worked for a very long time, right? They're a lot older than we are as a country, and we're a very new society, and technology is changing very quickly, and things are more expensive. But if we cooked at home a little bit more and got around the table, then it would reduce the chances of putting those weird chemicals inside of us. And now maybe we're not worried about the weird chemicals, but now we're worried about how much we're eating, how much oil are we using, how much butter we're using, which are controllables, right? Like I can decide if I'm going to cut half of a butter stick and put it inside of my pasta versus a quarter of a butter stick, right? Like still like flavor, but I don't need as much. And that's something you can control. I heard recently the phrase control your controllables. And I can't control if a company is going to use stevia or not, right? Like it's I don't get to control that. They have decided that if I purchase their thing, then I'm allowing them to do that thing. But outside, like at home, I can control. It's my little experiment, right?
Yeah. I went to Thailand in November last year, and it's just completely different culturally. Like they cook everything at home, and it's like it's this we have something like that here where we go out to eat and it's like a social event and a time to connect with loved ones and have a conversation. I mean, a lot of people end up on their phones anyway here, but like in Thailand it was so refreshing because everything is fresh. They grow everything. They grow their own vegetables. The way that they are so thorough with their food. Like I took a cooking class out there.
That's cool.
And it's this Thai family that basically built like an in-home it looked like something off the Food Network. Like it's like a separate section of their house where you go and they have like a big mirror up on the ceiling where you can watch them cook and they teach you how to make different dishes.
That's so fun.
Yeah, and it's so thorough. Like they are patient. They will wash the rice so many different times to make sure it's clean. Everything is fresh. Like, and they eat in small portions. Like that's another thing. Like everything here is in excess. In Thailand, it's like the size of your fist. You know, it's like you take a scoop, you take some meat, and you eat slow. You know, so that you're filling up faster. It's just a completely different way of life. And I wish I could pull up like the obesity rate in Thailand compared to America.
I'm sure it's it's a lot lower. And they're also walking more. They do more housework. Like, it's different, right?
Right.
I
You
wish
said 2/3 of America's obese.
2/3, yeah.
There it looks like about 32%, so almost a third.
A third.
I mean, which is more than I was expecting, which could be wrong.
And
Don't quote me, but
I think that the way that we calculate that 2/3 and that 1/3 is they use BMI. And so I think everybody knows BMI pretty popularly. And I think everybody pretty much knows that it's not the most accurate thing in the world, right? Like, I am technically obese, right?
Really?
Technically, yeah.
By BMI.
By BMI, right? But I because I worked in the lab, I did a DEXA scan, and so they use that BMI as you're 33% or 33 on the BMI score, which means you're technically obese. But they don't realize, or they don't take into account the amount of muscle mass I have, or the amount, like, how dense my bones are. If you live for a very long time, like I did my DEXA scan, and my bones are denser than two deviations higher than the standard median, right? So like higher than 99% of the population, and like that's a dense bone, right? And I'm only, at that time I was 16% body fat, which is well within healthy range. But if I only went off of my BMI, then I know that it's not the most accurate. So I do think that we have to understand that though we are 2/3 in the obesity range, we are using a maybe not the most accurate thing. So, but even then, if cardiovascular health or cardiovascular disease is the number one killer, then that 2/3 is probably pretty accurate, right? Like, it's because not a lot of people are working out that much, right? Yeah. And people are still learning about what muscle mass really does, or our older population like finally starting to lift weights a little bit more, and what that does to our bone structure. And like, so a lot of people really, you're in a small majority if you are like in the gym consistently and lifting weights. So the 2/3, maybe not the most accurate, but generally for the 300 million Americans, 300 million Americans, probably pretty accurate, you know? Right. It's just that it's not the most accurate for a specific population.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you one more thing about the body positivity movement, because a lot of times people think women and like female when they're thinking about body dysmorphia and people feeling uncomfortable in their skin, but it's something obviously that men struggle with as well. I know plenty of men that struggle with body image and not being happy in their skin, and you know, men still face there's still beauty standards for both men and women, like I was talking 100%. About earlier. So like, I know of men that have taken steroids because they feel like maybe they're too skinny and they want to put on more size, or like men being short, like if they feel like they're not tall enough. So what do you think of this issue from the perspective of men? Like, as a man, what unique challenges do men face when it comes to feeling insecure in their body?
I think that especially men who are fit, especially those who are in the gym, have so much body dysmorphia that there's almost a reason they're there, and it's all not always for like mental health and wanting to be just healthier. Unfortunately, a lot of times they're trying to solve a problem. Like, if you think of the generalization of conversationalists, men usually want to solve the problem, women like to vent, right? It's a very general thing. I'm not saying that it's true, but if we use that set of data, then men are there to solve a problem, and they are they look at themselves a lot of times as the problem, right? My legs aren't big enough, my quads aren't big enough, my chest isn't broad enough, right? I'm not wide enough, and or I'm too wide, or I'm too big, and it's like you're 100 and 200 pounds, maybe you have a little bit of a belly, and there's just this, and I do it all the time where we walk in front of the mirror and I'm like, man, I'm only like, I don't look good. I'm disappointed with the way I look, and it's an unfortunate reality that I think a lot of men have that don't really talk about it, because I think that it's not really as, it's like, oh, you're just being, I'm gonna cut, I don't know if I can cuss, but you're like, you're being a little bitch, like, and it's like, nah, dog, like, I really am like disappointed in the way I am, and it's like, how can we use a team or a community of people that are like, hey, it's all right, like, you don't gotta, maybe you really don't feel comfortable in your body, but like, hey, you look good, hey, you look good. Like a compliment to a guy, yeah. It's like, dude, you're looking good today. I was out yesterday, and this guy was like, man, I really like the way you look. And I was like, thanks, man. He's like, you work out? I was like, yeah, I do. Good job. And then like walked away. Random guy, I don't know who he was. I was like, that was kind of cool. You know, like hyping each other up rather than just constantly beating each other down. And I think it's like, haha, we're just joking. But I think it's you walk home with it. I mean, not all men, right? But like it does happen quite a bit. So like, I think about what value am I offering to me and my community, and is talking shit to a friend and say, hey man, you're a fat sack of shit. Like that doesn't do any value, right? Like no. They probably already were thinking the thing, and then now you're just gonna make it that much worse. And then and some people are motivated by that, but not everybody is, right? So understanding who your audience is extremely important, and making sure that you are listening to the way the person reacts. Like, hey man, like, are you working out? Like, how's it going? I am working out, or I'm not working out. Okay, well, why not? You know, like, what's been going on? And then kind of diving down and asking the question as a friend, rather than somebody who's just like having an expectation of where they think they should be, right? And then not projecting those things.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of circles back again to your health and wellness thing, right? Which is, men are also not, I mean, it's getting better, but men are also not encouraged to talk about things that are bothering them, you know, like, because of what you're saying, and it is true, like, men are more like, how can we fix it, instead of how can we talk about it, not realizing that sometimes talking about it is how you fix it. It can fix your mood, it can make you feel validated, it can give you the motivation you need to maybe get up and go to the gym, right? And it's not something that men are encouraged to do, which is, you know, talk about their feelings or give a compliment, you know, to another man, because, oh, I don't want to sound gay, whatever, you know. And so they're kind of, so social media, right? Everyone's heard that quote, comparison is the thief of joy. So
that's a good one.
Oh, I didn't know you hadn't heard. I thought it was like one of those like
that's a good one.
Gandhi quotes that everybody had heard.
I think I have heard it, but I do like it.
Yeah. So men are on social media too, right? And there's plenty of male influencers out there, fitness guys. You know, when I'm scrolling through TikTok, I see male fitness influencers, female fitness influencers, and then there's still like pretty universal societal expectations for what men and women are both supposed to look like. So men face similar pressures when it comes to like their bodies. I would say that women, there's a little bit more emphasis placed on like how women look than on how men look, culturally speaking. But they still face pressures, you know, and you don't really hear about it that often. And I think that there's a unique struggle there, because I know, you know, plenty of men my age in my life that struggle with how they look, probably in the same way that I do or than anyone else does, and they're just eating it. You know, they're not talking about it because it ties back to mental health too. You know, like if you feel like that and you're not getting it out, and no one's there to support you, like that can get quite lonesome.
It can get very lonesome, and I think sometimes we have this own expectation that an expectation is placed where it's like, oh, you should know about this because you're a guy. Like guys work out, like that's what they do, right? And it's like not all people do, and not all people have that. Just the same way as maybe women don't have the entire understanding of way that hormones work, because there's a lot of fluctuations constantly, and you need doctors as an assistant. same thing goes with a lot of guys too. They have to deal with hormone struggles, thyroid issues. I mean, it's humans are humans, right? And so it's they deal with we deal with a lot of the same things, but it's definitely not communicated as much. But I also do think that there's been such a it's been a long emphasis on how women should look, right? From heels to always wanting to look younger. What can I do with my makeup or whatever it may be to portray this expectation of beauty that I think is also not fair, right? But men have it too, to the point where we're like, okay, well, maybe I should start taking steroids. Like, what do I got to take? Like, what supplements are there? Do I take SARMs? Do I take, like, what do I need to do to get to that point where finally a girl will look at me and make me feel like, oh man, like I'm finally doing something right? Like, it, it is the male's responsibility to act on, to act to court a lady, right? Traditionally. And if that guy's not confident or doesn't feel like, or like he's not looked at or seen and feels sad in his own existence, then and I think part of it, even if he's working out, like, yeah, if you're not working out, you're not doing those things and you're letting yourself go and you're mad about that, then take some initiative and go to the gym as well. And we talked about how that might be more complicated, get a trainer, do all those things. And then or talk about it with some community and like have a community of people that are like, all right, we're going to the gym every Monday, or we're going to go play basketball on Wednesdays, something that's simple. But it does motivate people to start looking for that quick fix, just like women do, where they want to maybe go get lip filler, guys want to go get steroids, like it. And not always from the people that should be selling drugs, right? Like, it's like you're getting stuff from a guy at the gym who really knows his stuff. Like, no, like, we need testosterone replacement therapy if you're older and if that's your issue, or like if you have a lot of concussion, that's a sign or a symptom, unfortunately, where you have, like, and a lot of guys play football. If you've had enough concussions, you have your pineal gland doesn't nearly work the same, and then you need testosterone replacement. I had a friend who went through that, didn't know what was going on, finally started taking testosterone, or went to go get a test, and his levels were like 200, and he's like 25 years old. That's insane. Like, we should be in the range of 700, or like, I think it depends on the person, but 600 to 1,000, right? But upper end is 1,000. And he was at 250. And so he started taking some steroids and testosterone replacement therapy, guided by a doctor. And it was like, oh, I feel good now. Like, I feel normal. Like, I feel motivated. I feel like I have energy throughout the day. Like, I'd never felt like that before. I didn't realize I was missing that thing. Like, it's crazy. Like, it can be used as a necessity, but at the same time, unfortunately, it's used as like an scapegoat, or like to find a distraction because we're not comfortable in our own space.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Shifting gears a little bit here.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me that you came from a background of poverty, or like a town where, what was it, 98% of the population was below the poverty line.
98% of the population, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, given your experience living in a town like that and with health and wellness, how does economic class play a role in people's ability to live a healthy lifestyle? Do you feel like it's still possible to live a healthy lifestyle if you're living in poverty, for example, or like, what are the limitations there?
Is it possible? Yes. Is it difficult? Yes. I think that part of what makes it difficult is the lack of access to information. People who are higher in social and economic status usually have a higher likelihood of going to go get educated, and then a lot of times they go back to the family, they go back home, and then they teach at a local school. They're active in their community, even if they're just with friends or going out to the bar. It's like, oh no, I don't want that drink. Like, I don't drink beer. I only drink tequila because it has less calories. And people are like, where'd you hear? Like, what did that come from? Right? There was never, and then now it perpetuates, and now you and your friends only drink. If you guys are gonna have alcohol, you guys are drinking tequila rather than drinking whiskey, right? And so then that grows, and then you create a ripple effect within your community of now, oh, there's somebody who's in health that's or like who has knowledge about this space and can kind of like give information to their community and theirs give it to theirs, right? And it expands. So I think with the lack of education or the lack of access to education or the lack of access to a computer or phones, right? Like these things that give us opportunity to learn about what really is out there isn't always a reality, and a lot of times wasn't a reality for a lot of friends. And so it was like, well, let's go to McDonald's because mom and dad they're working in the fields, so we got to go to McDonald's and pick up everyone's getting a Happy Meal. And was that the best option? No, but mom and dad are working in the field all day. We're getting out at 8 o'clock at night, and we don't have another option. We don't really want to cook. They have another option, but they don't really want to cook because they're tired because they have to wake up again at 4 o'clock the next day to get in a truck and then drive out to a field and then work in the sun all day, and then not get paid really enough to go and get enough groceries to feed their kids. And in lower socioeconomic status households, there tends to be more kids, which again, I think a lot of times it's like, well, they shouldn't be having kids. Like, well, there's not the education, right? People don't know or don't realize or know how to change the cycle that their parents had 7 kids and they had 4, so they think they've leveled up.
Right.
And generations down, sure, like that, the next kid might only have 2 kids, right? But they also, because of their track record and what they see that mom and dad have 7 siblings, then it's normal, and then they don't realize the cost that comes with. And so then you're not educated on what financial stability really looks like how do you invest, like how do you get out of this circle. And it's very rare and very sad. And the ones who do leave, they look back, and I'm a victim of this, where I look back and I'm like, man, I don't want to go back. Like, why would I? Like, things are better here, and they are technically better here, but there's also a nice opportunity for me to go back and teach and learn and change the way that things work there now, right? Now that I have this background, now that I have the opportunity and the information, how can I come into a community and say, hey, like, this is the way that we should be doing things. Maybe don't have flour tortillas, maybe we have corn tortillas. And did you know that you can go on Amazon and get one of those, you can take test strips for super cheaper than you can get them at CVS. I didn't even know that because I've never looked at Amazon because it was never an opportunity. And so we have the opportunity as people who are educated and have left home in an impoverished area to go back and to educate. And it's ideal. I mean, hopefully this gets to that point, right, where it continues to grow and more people learn about what that looks like and giving back to their communities. But it is difficult, and it's unfortunately, I think, a lack of education that continues to perpetuate the problem.
Yeah. I mean, you took that a completely different angle than I was expecting, but it's so true. Because I was thinking more like it's so expensive to live right now, and they can just barely afford to live, let alone afford the prices of how much healthy stuff costs, right? But what you're talking about is probably even more important, which is something that plays into poverty as a whole, and like I've had this conversation with multiple people because, again, it's one of those things where people like to point at, people who are impoverished or even homeless people, right? And say, they must have earned that. Whatever they did, like, they did something wrong then if they're in this position, or they're not doing enough if they're in this position. And it's just not the way the world works. And I understand why people do it, because it's scary. It's scary to think that bad things happen to good people, right? It's scary to think that you could do everything and still not have everything work out for you the way you wanted, right? And that's threatening to most people, because if it's them, that means it could be me. That means I could lose everything. That means I could be in their shoes. And it's easier to invalidate it than for them to acknowledge that, oh, maybe something's fucked up with the system. Maybe something needs to change. It's too big of a battle for them to fight. It's too threatening. It's too scary. So it's easier for them to point at people that are, in poverty or not educated or homeless and say, well, they're just stupid, or they don't work hard enough, or they're lazy, or they're this, or they're that. Not realizing that, like, we're products of our environment. So if you grew up in poverty, right, just because one person beat poverty, right? Like you beat poverty somehow, right? You came out of your environment a different person. Not everybody does that, right? It's just like it's not that simple, right? Like if you have no example, if you don't have a certain gene or you don't have a place to turn to get other information to know any better or know different, how are you supposed to do better when you don't know what you don't know? You know? So it's like if your parents were uneducated, if all you've known is this way of life, having multiple kids, struggling with the bills, growing up in this small town, if you don't have exposure to anything else, how are you supposed to beat that? Right? And it's like, I don't want to discredit hard work because it matters, but I do think that, like, so what you're saying, education is huge, right? Like that plays into so many different aspects of life. Like even what you're talking about with people who are in poverty having more children, they don't have access to contraceptives the way that other socioeconomic classes do, right? Because they're not educated in ways that people of higher socioeconomic statuses are, right? So like that plays a role when it comes to education. Them not knowing better when it comes to what's healthy, what's not healthy, not being educated to get certain jobs, right? Like it's a feedback loop. It's so hard to break out of it. So, I mean, that's a better answer to the question, right? It's more complex than just they can't afford healthy food, which is true, right? Like it's hard to fucking afford eggs for a normal person right now, right? Yeah. For whatever reason, eggs is the go-to thing right now. For inflation's so high, eggs are $9.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
There's the disease with chickens right now, which is making eggs more expensive.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why.
Well, that's now you know. Yeah. You learn something new.
Learn something new every day. Exactly. I think that you hit, like, hard work does matter, but I know a lot of hardworking people that are in poverty. And so, yeah, hard work has something to do with it, but I've opened like 4 businesses now, and what goes into that is extremely lengthy. And how do I file an LLC? Like, and who do I look to? If I don't have an attorney in my community of impoverished people, why would they come back to my town? There's no business there. They're not going to be, they spent all this money to go get educated and to come back and then not get paid what you need to pay back your loans. Then you're just perpetuating the problem. They need to go somewhere else. They need to make enough money and learn enough that they can go back and do it almost for, not necessarily for free, but for very inexpensive. And knowledge is not cheap. I've spent a lot of money to get knowledgeable and then to travel, to get experience. It's not easy. It's I would have nobody. I don't have a CPA. What CPA is there? What attorney is there? I don't have access to a computer. I can go to the library. The library is never open because nobody wants to work it or people can't. Like, they have kids. It's hard.
Right.
Very hard.
Yeah. And I think that I feel like the most, like, people who have a lot to say about people that come from poverty, right? A lot of times are people that haven't actually come from poverty. Like, they came from families that were poor and struggling, and maybe you weren't sure how you were going to pay the bills from week to week. But, like, poverty is something else, right? Like, I've never experienced it, thankfully, but I remember they showed this documentary in one of my classes. It was like a sociology class, and it was a documentary that followed around a couple different families. I can't remember what the city was, but they were in poverty, right? So it was a mom who had multiple children. She was working 3 fast food jobs, right? So she was working 7 days a week. They were living in like a motel, and she would wake up at like 3 a.m. to go work at Dunkin' Donuts, and then she'd go from Dunkin' Donuts to work at Jack in the Box, and then she'd go from Jack in the Box to Domino's, and she'd sleep like 3 hours every night. And this is 7 days a week. And this is just to be able to give her kids a place to live and put food on the table, which was a lot of times like hot and ready pizza for $5. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, they're not doing enough. You know, they're working more than you are. You know what I mean? And you might not see as much value in their work as you see in your work. but it's not like they want to be doing this. You know what I mean? And it's just like people have such an unreal, there's just no sympathy.
No.
You know, there's no empathy, and people have an unrealistic expectation of how easy or how hard it is to come out of something. And yeah, I mean, I get worked up about it because I'm all
Same.
about putting yourself in other people's shoes, which I get is hard to do if you haven't experienced someone else's way of life, right? Like I have enough frames of reference in my existence where I've had, um like either myself or a parent where they've been stressed about money. So it's like, okay, I have been in an environment where someone's been stressed about money, so I have that frame of reference. People who are trust fund babies don't know what that experience is like, right? They don't have the experience of being in the car with their parent and the gas light coming on and their parent being stressed as fuck because the gas light came on and witnessing that and then feeling guilty about asking for things because it costs too much. They don't have that, right? So like I get it. I get that it's hard to like break out of that. Like all we have is what we know. But man,
I think
like
if we took the time to be patient and open-minded enough to understand the other side, it would make a lot of things nice, or like a lot of things more palatable and understanding. But I feel like people are so quick to say, "Oh, they're just not working hard enough." And it's like, well, they're working 7 days a week. It's like, well, they should find better jobs. It's like, what do you mean they should find better jobs? They found the best jobs in town that they could. They don't have enough gas to travel. What do you mean they should find a better job? Oh, well, then they should just save more money on gas. What do you, like? Or save more money for gas. It's like, well, they have to feed their kids. How do you want them to feed their kids? And they also like to have pleasures as well. They like to maybe go to a movie every once in a while. They like to have a date. They like to have partners. Like they're still human. We're still human. Just because there's not as much money doesn't mean that all like now your job is to make money and that's it. Like it's a luxury to go out to eat. Yeah, I get it. But at the same time, for somebody's birthday, like you want to take them out to dinner, like you want to do that, and then it's frustrating because we think that it's just going to be this super quick fix, like they're going to find a better job. But then if the next kid down the line doesn't and still wants to provide, then all right, now we're going to get into the cartel, right? We're going to find another way to figure this out, and then now we have an entirely new set of issues. Do you think mom really cares about going to work out and staying fit right now? Mom's fucking stressed and has to worry about kid and possibly getting murdered, but kid just wants to find some stability, but mom's never around, dad was never around because they're working all the time. So then what does that do to the development of the kid, and do they ever really get to learn anything? It's so frustrating.
complex. People
Yeah.
don't realize how much goes into it, right? And yeah, we went on a little bit of a tangent there, but it was an important one, so I'm glad we did. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that I did not already cover before we go regarding health and wellness, its connection to poverty, mental health, men and their body dysmorphia, anything along those lines?
I think that health is complex and people are complex, and controlling your controllables is an important phrase that I will continue to use for my own life, and I want other people to do the best they can, because not everybody has the opportunity to do the best they can, right? Um, not everybody has the opportunity to go to the gyms, right, and to afford those things, but they're doing their absolute best. And I think giving yourself grace in that, but also understanding that it is an important thing for you to step out and even go for a walk or do push-ups outside and do squats and do little things that you do have the opportunity to. And if you get home late and you need to walk a dog, you go and walk your dog, go and squats, right? Do 10 squats before you get up, or before you get out of the house, right? Doing the little changes that will ultimately, maybe immediately you don't see the benefit and get this immediate gratification for, and maybe not see the point of, will ultimately allow you the opportunity for growth in more areas than just fitness. And fitness changed my life, and gave me the opportunity to meet so many really fun people that have connected me in situations that I would have never had the opportunity to. And I would have never worked in the lab. I would have never gone to compete around the world. And it was something that was simple enough for me to start lifting at my high school gym and getting a community around me and having friends. And it changed everything for me. And so I behoove every individual listening, watching, to go out, find a community, and lift a little bit, do push-ups, do squats, do something. Just be conscious of what you're eating, and know that the only person that really cares about your health is you. And unfortunately, the corporations, doctors, and their preventative care, they're not there for your wellness. They're there for your health whenever you need them. You're there for you. You have to take control of your own life, and be well, right? And take it. It is only going to help not just you, but your community, and like your friends, your family, everybody around you will benefit, right? So, thank you for
Yeah.
allowing me on.
Right. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate your time, for sharing your expertise, your experience. If you guys would like to learn more about Ben or have additional questions, I'm going to have his contact information available on my YouTube and social media channels. I'll also have a link to his podcast, Ben Thinking, and his website at iehealth.co. You guys can also visit him in person to book a personal training session at the UFC Fit on Silverado Ranch in Maryland. And that wraps up today's episode. Thank you all for joining us, and I will see you all again in 2 weeks to talk more elephants.